I think first of all, let me make a little bit of a correction right now. The 2030 agenda is a document that has got a set of 91 paragraphs, and only one paragraph includes the goals, which is paragraph 51. And one of the things that we need to ask ourselves when we are dealing with the peace-building society is to make sure that we look at the agenda in its totality rather than to look at the agenda in its whatever, because conflict is a consequence of several things. Yes, for you to have peaceful, just, and inclusive societies, you need issues of economics, you need issues of governance, you need issues of other aspects of social cohesion. So it's not just restricted to goal 16. And for me, I think that's the beauty of the Agenda 2030, that for once we have realized that issues of peace are not just about what the communities do or what the governments do, but there are all subsects of economic issues, social issues, governance issues, and other foreign agenda issues that we need to bring to the table. So I am excited that there is that recognition. I am excited at what we have finally agreed on that we need to do. I am a little bit apprehensive, however, that this may still be seen as something that is done to some developing countries, done to some poor countries, rather than something that is done to all of us. So I am concerned about whether that inclusiveness means inclusiveness in Europe. It means inclusiveness on the global arena. It means inclusiveness in Africa. It means inclusiveness in the United States. If we begin viewing peacefulness, justice, and inclusiveness from a holistic perspective, cutting across all geographies, rather than just another project that we do to Africa, or we do to Asia, or we do to Latin America, we will have failed in the agenda. I think for me, the international community needs to do three things. Number one, they need to take a hard look at themselves and reassess and evaluate what part they are doing to contribute to the conflicts that we have around the continent. The majority of the conflicts and I'm talking about Africa here, has got nothing to do with the communities. All that the communities are doing is they want to have a decent life for themselves. But there are a whole lot of multinationals which come from Europe. There are a whole lot of companies which come from Europe. There are a whole lot of governments and there are a whole lot of machineries that find it in their interest to continue perpetuating this conflict, particularly in countries such as the DRC, countries such as Sierra Leone that have got a lot of resources. So for me, the first thing is for us to take a very hard look and ask ourselves, what part are we doing to contribute to the conflict? The second thing is to ask ourselves the honest question, is peace a linear process? You do not build peace by having a series of steps. Peace is a multiplicity of things. And so what we need to do is to ask ourselves, all this academic grounding that we have, all the thinking and all the analysis that we have done, how do we make sure that we do not use them as a formula to work with communities? How do we make sure that we let the communities be on the driving seat at the end of the day? But the third thing that I want to say is that ultimately, everything that we do in development has got to be something that the society wants. Is it something that the society decides? It is the society in the DRC, not some INGO, not even myself who's coming from another country, that we change the DRC and that should drive the DRC. It is not what some donors do somewhere. It's not even the amount of money that we give that eventually will bring some change. It is what that society does. And that boils down to two words: social contract. There has to be a very deliberate process especially the external actors, to find ways in which we look at the barriers to the relationship between the state and the society, between the society and themselves, and between the society and the larger government, and find ways in which, once again, the citizens and the society can be in the driving seat of governance, in the driving seat of development, not merely providing input or providing ideas into it. I think for me, three things. One is, let us rethink how we have constructed our partnerships. The idea of partnerships we have is sometimes about some people that we give money, or some people who are in some developing countries that we, or whatever that we work with, or about people who think like us. So our idea of partnership is another peace-building organization, another conflict resolution organizations. Those partnerships cannot help us much in the current framework. We must get out of there, look at partnerships that are beyond, look at partnerships with even people that we don't like. People even have ideologies that we may not appreciate, but who collectively will help us in rebuilding the process. I think the other thing that we need to ask ourselves is, how do we reorganize our partnerships in a manner that the society, not the civil society, takes the leading role? For a long time, we have confused civil society with society. Civil society in many cases and in many forms have their own organized groups. And they're a group of either self-interest or they're representing a particular section of the society. That is not society. If we are to rethink the change that we need to make, we need to rethink how we move away from just engaging with civil society as the representatives of society into engaging with civil society as facilitators of the people that bring their society. I have always had this terminology used that we are the voice of the voiceless. And I ask, why do you want to be the voice of the voiceless? The voiceless are not dead, they are there. So why don't you give them the space? Why don't you give them the opportunity for their voice to be heard, instead of you saying that you are the voice of the voiceless? You say that we speak for the poor. Why do you have to speak for the poor? The poor can speak for themselves. Give them an opportunity. You may need to strengthen them in some way, but allow them to speak to their ways. And finally, who do politicians listen to? They don't listen to some organized group. They listen to the society. Because when all is said, every politician knows that they owe their living to the society, they owe their politics to the society, they owe even their power to that society. So they always know, they can always get around with the NGOs and get around with the civil society organizations, but they know that they cannot get around from society. Even if they are authoritarian, autocratic, the society will always rise up against them. And so therefore, for me, what we need to rethink is not how to engage more with organizations, the so-called organizations on the ground, but how to get the citizens to engage much more with their own government and to give them the power and the tools to have that engagement, and we act as facilitators.